morning. I'd like to tell you a story. And this is done, I'm going to do this explanation within a story type framework. So go with me. Let's drop in this kind of space, this kind of mindset of just a story weaving. So there's this big piece of land. And on this piece of land, lots of people live. And there's different parts of the land, and it looks different depending on where you are on the land. There's this glorious lawn area that's been finely manicured, and it's in the bright open sunshine. There's lots of space to move and play, and lots of people gather there because of that. And then you have the meadowland, which is not so cultured and is a bit more wild. There's like beautiful flowers, but there's still a softness to this meadow, and the grasses can be long and the flowers kind of get in the way sometimes, but people still gather there and it's a nice place to play. And then you get to the edges of the land where it literally sits between the domesticated feel of the land and the wild beyond. And it's in these edges that you get rough and dark and smooth and light, and I'm mixing it all up now, but you see what I mean? You're right on the edges of things. So you're not quite in those beautiful sunshiny open spaces. There's a little bit of shadow and overhanging trees, but sunlight does come through, like that dappled sunlight does come through. And a few people will gather at those edges of spaces. And it's the same down by the river. There's this fast running river that goes through the land, and the land actually butts up to the river. And people often play on the banks. Well, you know, the rocks, the ground's uneven. But a few people will play there. And then you have the last part of the land, which is the dark, dark woods and the fast, fast river. And not many people play in those places. And once they go into those spaces, they often never come back. So people don't actually know what's beyond there. They assume that it's dangerous and dark, and only a few people can walk in those spaces. And maybe for right reason. So here we have all our humans playing in all their different spaces and places. And this is exactly how I currently observe the fitness industry when it comes to the perimenopause and menopause space. And I feel like I dance on the edges. So I'm not in those beautiful meadows and out in the sunlight, but I'm not in the dark, dark woods either. I play and dance on the edges of this. And I like those spaces because they offer randomness, and they offer opportunity to explore things that are less than perfect, and yet they get to dance in the dark and the light at the same time. And so we have a world where, and it is a male dominated world, the fitness industry, regardless of what people think, it still is. And often the men have some of the biggest voices, not all, but they monopolize those spaces because of their big platforms and their bold voices. And they achieve great results for their clients. And so many people are drawn into their spaces. Now, I would put those coaches right on that beautiful manicured lawn where everything's perfect and ideal, and it's a forever summer for them. And then the meadowlands, there's many coaches who live in the meadowlands, and the meadowlands are a space where the coaches have realized that perhaps women are different to men. And so therefore they've been trying really hard to embrace the cyclic nature of women and training with their cycles, and incorporating that into training for women. And that's great. The meadowlands are great. More and more people are hanging out in the meadowlands. And then when you come beyond the meadowlands and you start moving to the edges, now this is a space where I kind of play in, what we've realized is you can't just, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the beautiful manicured lawn come too much into the meadowlands. we're trying to make those two spaces the same. We're still trying to work to a structure and a linear timeline and something that makes sense from a logical brain. And that doesn't work because women don't work like that. Yes, we may be cyclic, but we're also wild and uneven. We're raggedy around the edges and we're also beautiful at the same time. So how do we fit into we don't fit into that beautiful sunshiny space, and we don't seem to fit into the meadow space, especially when we're at transitional points in our life. So at the time of our birth, at the time of puberty, at the time of if we go through motherhood, and especially at the time of perimenopause and menopause, we're not fitting into either of these beautiful spaces. So we're sitting on these edges and we're looking out thinking that's where we need to be. So we keep trying to go back into the meadows and we keep trying to go onto the manicured lawn, and we get kicked back and we're told, no, you don't fit here. But if you want to fit here, you can, you just have to do it under all of these protocols and that will fit you back in. But really, at the end of the day, you're going to be kicked back to the edges because you can't cheat nature. She doesn't allow you to do that. Short periods you can play the game, but you won't be able to stay there for long because things are changing. So we fall to the edges, and that's where we're hanging out now. And beyond the edges then I go, that dark, dark forest where no one goes, that wild, wild river where you see one person jump in and never see them again. What's beyond there for us women? And I wonder, and I sit there and I ponder.